One thing is painfully obvious. Both the United States and Great Britain, through their entirety, have been nations who have been built upon genocide, imperialism, and propaganda. Our greatest minds and greatest thinkers are not a part of the government. Those are our greatest manipulators. Those are our most conniving countrymen. These are the ones who are able to manipulate a popular vote. Tell the people what they want to hear, and they will give you money. And of course, going from Bill Gates back to Tesla, John Holland, we have a long history of taking our greatest thinkers and profiting from them. We've got a great way of taking the ideas of peaceful men and using them for war, much like Andre Gagasian of New Jersey, which, by the way, is where John P. Holland is buried. Andre Gagasian of New Jersey wanted me to build him an engine so he could use it to kill people. Now, he'd already financed the money to buy the materials and the welder and some of the hand tools that were needed to make a basic one. He'd already done that before he told me what his intent was. John Holland died broke. Nikola Tesla didn't get to see the fruits of, well, his theories being right. Well, he already knew most of his concepts to be correct. I suppose I had to tell you a bit about John Holland. While I'm here getting coffee. There's a gentleman out here. He's kind of getting taken advantage of by a lady, but he likes my company. He wanted me to go get a coffee. So I'm doing it. Do what? $1 at the Christmas. Yes, sir. Thank you. All right. Well, seems I already know what I'm ordering. So John Holland, he was an immigrant, right? A lot of these stories start with immigrants, don't they? Immigrants who were given a chance here in the United States that they wouldn't have elsewhere. Anyway, in most of these cases, the United States didn't. It was tough to get them to commit to anything. Tough to get them to pull their heads out of their backsides and invest in new ideas. But as an immigrant, you could easily do it yourself. Well, that's not entirely true either, is it? Most people in the United States had to work for others, even after he made the first modern submarines. John Holland had to work for $4 a day. That's not much. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. You have a great day.
You too, thank you. I like her a lot. She is always pleasant and smiley. We like smiles, don't we? Pleasant people, people who are happy, people who are fun to be around. And those who are not fun to be around, we tend to shun and throw away. Well, some people aren't fun to be around because they're going through hell and they need help. Of course, as soon as you hear the word mentally ill, you start assuming that person is too retarded to know up from down, left from right, or their head from their ass. And that sucks. Nikola Tesla, probably autistic. Leonardo da Vinci, probably autistic. Albert Einstein, probably autistic. Heron of Alexandria, I wouldn't be surprised to hear he was probably autistic as well. Throughout history, we get to see how sometimes our greatest minds are given some attention. Oftentimes it's negative attention. Take a look at the Wright brothers. And you know, they had financing and assistance from the United States government, but after they made it to the air, the United States really stopped giving too much of a shit. I mean, it was basically a toy that people played with, similar to automobiles. It's a toy that rich people get to have over in Europe. Only rich people get to drive Rolls Royce, hand-built. Well, thank goodness for American innovation, we were able to build things for the masses. Mr. Ford was able to make it so that all of his employees, even the Jewish ones, and he didn't like Jews, by the way, even the Jews had health care. Even the Jews had child care if they worked for him. The Jews got paid the same amount of money as the black people did. And the black people got paid the same amount as the white people did. And the men got paid the same as the women did. And the child care was free. Imagine that. A little bit of socialism out of that hardy American. He believed if you take care of your employees, they'll take care of you. And take care of him they did. Made him the richest man on the planet. And it took wartime economies to change that. It's hard to sell bombs when nobody wants bombs. But then again, there are some things that war creates a need for. Mr. Holland died, well, broke. Great Britain's first submarine. Great Britain dubbed it the Holland 1. United States' first submarine was also called the Holland 1, or the S-1. S1 is a modern term. It was not called that back in the day. Now, they weren't called Hollands because they were made in Holland. They were called that because the last name of the guy who invented it was Holland. He came up with a lot of different things. A lot of inventions that we give credit to the Germans for in World War II were actually created by John Holland. Internal and external ballasts. A lot of the different balancing systems, the underwater breathing system, the escape system. He wanted you to be able to have a mask on your face so you could put the mask on and still be able to breathe. If you were stuck in the sub, you wanted you to be able to have a mask on so you could breathe. Also, they didn't quite know as much about diving with the human body at the time. I mean, they certainly did. They did know about the bends. There have been times all throughout history where people have, well, for example, the Spanish with gold. There were portions of the Spanish Armada, not the Spanish Armada that they sent to England, but the merchant fleet. When they'd hit the bottom and they're laden with gold or they're laden with other treasures that are, you know, obviously there's going to be things it's going to deteriorate. You're not going to want to try to pull up a whole shipload of soaked paper. But if it's bullion, gold, or silver, yeah, people will go down and get it. So they had divers that were prisoners, and the Spanish would send them down knowing that they were going to get the bends. And these folks would swim down there, and they'd pick up what they could of the gold and put it in the sacks next to them, and they had air bladders they had over their heads. And of course, they're down there at almost crush depth for a human body. You know, they're coming back up after being down there, getting lightheaded after just a few minutes. There's not a lot of air in that bag. They'd drown down there. As long as they got a few bars of gold onto the net that you could haul up, who cared? If they were able to make it back up to the surface, they'd get the bends, and then they'd die an excruciating death. We talk about Germany doing this in World War II and how new this German stuff was. No, the things that Germany did are the history of warfare. The strong preying on the weak? No. The popular preying on the unpopular. Whose propaganda are you going to listen to? Well, that depends on what? Who's got the most power? If they have power, they must have it because they were intelligent. It was their intelligence that got them that. Was it Donald Trump's intelligence that got him $1 million loan from his daddy when he turned 18? No. No, it wasn't. How many of you who want to claim that Trump is a self-made man, if you know anything about biology, you know it doesn't work that way. But he went back in time and boffed his mom, and he's his own daddy. That's just some absurd crap. He's not a self-made man. His daddy gave him $1 million loan. How many of you can say that you got $1 million loan from your daddy? How many of you? Show of hands. I'll put my hand up, except it's untrue. It's untrue. Now that goes into another subject that I want to talk about with some of the people that were witnesses to situations, and it's recorded that they were there for those things. And some of them are quite dishonest, but I know their reasoning for not being honest. That doesn't make it valid or acceptable. I basically run around trying to get help from people who aren't going to try, or from people who are going to put forth a minimal effort, or who aren't going to understand. There's also a lot of people, their fears are legit. There's a lot of intelligent people who told me they were going to help me out and didn't. But if you look out across the great horizon that is our future, we want to view it that way, don't we? It's going to be a great and wonderful future for our kids. We're just going to hope that it's going to happen, but we're not going to take steps to get there. Mr. Holland had great ideas, and then his ideas were pirated by people who thought that they owned his ideas. So they tied up a lot of their money, and he tied up a lot of his money in fighting shit in court. When people are coming after you like that, you've revolutionized the world. And he didn't realize how much he had truly revolutionized it, but indeed he did. We even had merchant submarine fleets. What he was hoping for was, well, less war, not more. A lot of those great American innovators, and we claim that they're American today, don't we? We'll admit that they were immigrants when we make our shows about them. Of course, we want to talk about how horrible and how much America hates immigrants, right? Well, yeah, very much so. Even if you're able to make something of yourself, you're still going to likely end up broke and penniless unless you're a drug dealer. And then the United States will tax the shit out of you, and then complain about not getting enough taxes, and then they'll send somebody down to shoot you. I'm not saying that out of paranoia or delusion. I'm saying that out of an understanding of American history. Albert Einstein was an immigrant. Nikola Tesla was an immigrant. John Holland was an immigrant. Hiram Maxim was an immigrant. Shall I continue? Much like Germany, it wasn't American ingenuity, just like it wasn't German ingenuity that did any of this. It was the accumulation of knowledge over long periods of time, and people who had a genuine interest who were likely very skilled. John Holland, when they decided that they were going to test out computer models for the best hull for high speed underwater, they discovered that Mr. Holland's ideas, especially the Holland 6, were nearly the perfect shape for high speed and for underwater. And, there's a lot to be said about that. He had to think and understand from physics at his level, which for some people is greater than what they see in the physics books. Much of the stuff that we have today was invented or created by people. And you wouldn't Think so, but people like Nikolai Tesla and Albert Einstein, how much they touch our world every day, even after leaving it. The Wright brothers, after their first flight, the British overtook America as far as how much money was getting poured into flight, how much interest there was. The first British submarine was built by John Holland. The first American submarine, we give Hunley credit as the first submarine, but it's a diving bubble. I mean, the Hunley is definitely not a submarine. It's a submersible, but it's not a submarine. And in no way or sense of the word is it anywhere close to modern. I mean, this thing was hand cranked. To take untrained men to war is to lead them to their deaths. It is to invite slaughter. Although we've seen time and again throughout history where a creative mind trumps all the training that you might think you have. We get to see how walking into an ambush, even against untrained units, as long as they understand how to engulf you, you're done for. That's the problem with the United States. The people who are making the profits and given far more credit than they deserve are people like Bill Gates who stole what they have. Donald Trump is famous for hiring immigrants, not paying them, and then having them deported. Now, those of you who think I'm Trump bashing, I'm not. I don't think any of them are any better. There's a connection between disabilities and being bullied. Between high intelligence and being bullied. People don't like feeling stupid. It makes them angry. People want to feel that they are superior, that their genetic lineage, that their DNA is superior. Nearly all humans are ingrained with the need to breed. That's why we get horny. It's because it is ingrained in our DNA to spread our DNA. Now our logical thinking may be different. Your body may say, hey, you need to make babies, you need to make babies, you need to make babies. But you don't want babies. Having a baby has become a government institution in and of itself these days. Once you have a child, you automatically owe thousands of dollars and you're into it for the rest of your life. You might think you're not. You might think that at 18 you get to be done, but you don't. When it comes to high-functioning autistic folks, we're at a great disadvantage. Our predators get to use our intelligence to pretend that we're not disabled and therefore denies the rights of a disabled person. But then they ignore our intelligence, claim that we have disabilities that we don't. so that nobody will listen to us. And I got a question for you. Some of these people actually are schizophrenic. Some of these people actually are disabled, delusional, but we've also recorded those people, despite the fact that those people were schizophrenic or delusional. When they were assaulted, they were assaulted. It's recorded. They were assaulted. It's not a figment of my imagination. It's recorded on my YouTube channel when Jamie got punched in the head. That's a fact. Calling Jamie schizophrenic or delusional doesn't detract from the fact that that is a fact, Jack. Found another feather. I got another 1,000 or so of them. I'll have something useful. Hopefully I'll get enough for my costume. I already have some red dye for coloring them. Painting them all black. Anyway, we got a lot of people with ideas. You ever hear of Archimedes? Invented a steam cannon. Defeated some Romans by diverting a volcanic flow. We get to hear all sorts of great and wonderful stories about Archimedes, telling his men to shiny up the back of their shields and direct them all at the Roman ships. That was the siege of Syracuse, by the way. Archimedes was a highly intelligent man, and he was killed by a Roman soldier. Oh, Archimedes is also famous for explaining to everybody how a lever worked. He did this by making a claim that he could, well, given a long enough lever, he could lift the entire world. That's quite a claim. And obviously, with the way that things work, it doesn't actually work that way, but the point that he was making is quite valid. Is it possible for a small group of men to lift an entire ship up? Yes. A very heavy ship? Yes. Now, if he'd have had the advent of pulleys, oh wow, he could have even made it simpler than that. A long lever with a pulley at the very end of the fulcrum attached to an anchor point. Oh my God. One person could have done it. And we do have machines that have been created on shows like Mythbusters and a lot of shows similar. Well, what do they show? They show that a long lever, you could definitely lift something even heavier than yourself as long as the lever is long enough. Now, how far you're going to be able to lift it, that's a little bit different, isn't it? But then, of course, you've got the cambered lever. It's basically a bend in it so that at a certain point in the leverage, you're not lifting as much. It's more sideways motion of the weight. And of course, that makes it easier to actually manipulate and to move. Cantilever. Very cool. There's the stuff that I designed. There's 3 ways to fight a war. The most popular way, we'll call it the first way, is through battle and conquest. That's physical conquest. That would be war. The second one is through the way that people think. That would be politics, religion. And the third way is building. Now, if you notice, people tend to want to believe something that they see. If you've got this imaginary God, right? But you want people to believe in it, well, then you create yourself a statue of it. Let's say this is a real God to you, but it's invisible. People can't see it. Well, you have to have a house as a representation to show you, well, our God does exist. It needs a house. Somehow it makes the connection in people's minds and makes it more of a real thing. If it's so real to these people, even if it is just a schizophrenic delusion, if it is so real to these people that they are willing to build houses for it, well, these can't be bad people, can they? Of course not. Don't make assumptions, bud. We gotta judge each person on an individual basis. We've got a lot of highly intelligent people who are artists that did horrible things. Like, of course, Adolf Hitler. He was an artist. But was he a horrible person because he was an artist? No, he was a horrible person because of his politics. Now, when it comes to construction, that's the thing, is that the first 2 ways of fighting a war are faulty. Hello? The first one, where you gotta fight battles, well, you still have to build things. You gotta build fortresses, you gotta build weapons. You still need the construction industry if you're gonna fight a war that way. Now, let's say you're gonna use religion and politics. Well, next thing you know, in order to get people to look at the might and the power, you have to, of course, post up monuments and statues with your name on them. That's one of the things I learned about what a liberal is in Boulder, Colorado. Liberal doesn't mean what you think it does. It doesn't matter if you're a liberal or a Republican or a Democrat, you're all shitheads. It doesn't matter what political party you belong to. Are you making your own decisions, or are you letting a political affiliation do the thinking for you out of simplicity and laziness? And then things get out of line, and all you can do is complain about how unfair it is after looking away to it happening to many other people. And what did they say? They also said it was unfair, didn't they? Well, the whole world's unfair. That was your cop-out. When people were victimized and come to you for help, and you say it's unfair for everybody. Everybody's got problems. And then you end up with those problems, and it's a different tune, ain't it, son? The hell is that? Yo, I think that might be a meth bag that I just picked up off the ground here. It might also be a parts bag. It's got some sort of... Alright, it looks like lithium grease that was in it, so it was probably just a part. And I'm outside of the auto parts store, so that's probably what it is. I'm still gonna throw it away. I'm sorry I got busted helping people today and being nice to people. I know you guys wanna pretend I'm the fun fairy keister bunny of evils. Oh my god, it's Sean the Evil. Him and his evil ways. Doing those evil things. We don't know what those evil things are, but we were told he's evil, so we might as well go after him anyway. Blah, blah, blah. Humans are entertaining that way. When it comes to popularity, there has been a connection made with looks and intelligence. And a lot of people might think that folks with bad vision or people who are not as attractive are more likely to be intelligent. Well, no, actually good-looking people are more likely to have higher intelligence. But they're also doted over more. They're given more attention, more special treatment, more advantage. Now, does that mean that a good-looking person is likely to be picked on the same as somebody who is not good-looking who's intelligent? I mean, we know that that connection with intelligence is there. Well, to some degree. But only if you show your intelligence. You want to hang out with the popular girls, they're pretty too. You might be intelligent, but with no self-esteem, you're not going to get far. Being in with the popular crowd might help with your shitty-ass self-esteem. But then you have to play stupid. You have to pretend that you're as ignorant as they are, or that you hate the same people that they do. And that really gets exhausting. A lot of people pretend to be somebody else to make others happy. Even being as highly intelligent as they are, they're intelligent enough to read the room and know that either you join them in their stupidity and frolicking in that stupidity, or you become a target of that frolicking. That sucks. Is that a battery in the road? Yep, and it's squished. Oh. Pretty cool, huh? Getting back to where this all started, Mr. Holland came over here at 32 years old to the United States. His first submarine was actually financed by the precursors to the IRA, that's the Irish Republican Army. Irish independence has been a hot topic since the Romans were there. And since then, they've had a lot of invasions. I mean, the Vikings took the island over. You're probably not going to find anybody who's had their ancestry in Ireland who doesn't have Viking lineage. I mean, it was a complete takeover. That's one of those things where, you know, a lot of people want to say there's a fourth way to fight the war, and that's to breathe them out. Prima nocta and all that stuff. I'm sure you guys have seen Braveheart. If you haven't, it's a pretty long movie, and a lot of you youngins have been so hopped up on pills since you first started going to school that you don't have the attention span for a movie like that. And I'm sorry that happened to you. At least you know how to ADHD out on computer games. And I feel that that's a lot more productive mentally. Although you get sucked in, you get to make progress. You know, you bend over backwards over and over and over to make your parents happy. It's never good enough. But if you don't make them happy, you get punished. If it's not good enough, though, you're going to get punished anyway. And then you get a girlfriend or a wife, and it's the same thing. You're like, hey, I'm putting all this effort in, all this time, all this attention, and all I get is that I'm not doing anything right, no matter what. Shit, on a video game, you go through You make an objective, yes, I've made progress. And it is progress. It's not, all right, well, congratulations, you beat the level, go back to level 1. Congratulations, you beat the level, go back to level 1. Isn't the point of conquering said quest to move on? Move on to the next level, the next stage? Whether it be in life or on a video game? But at least in a video game, you can kind of feel like you're getting something out of it. For me, when I was going through my evidence in Rawlins, Wyoming, Rand Ingersoll was going to help me and her friend Miranda. Well, the name in the RV park. And I was trying to work on some very important stuff. I finally had a place where I could sit down. She was occupied with Miranda, but then they wanted my attention, and it was, all right, well, I'm going to slam Sean's computer shut, and then we're going to giggle about it like it's funny. And then they want to laugh and make fun of me when I'm not happy about them doing that. Of course, Rand, I was drunk, and I'm expected to understand, aren't I? Like Robert Warnick, the sex offender, one of his friends and or relatives got a hold of me, knowing that I had posted up about Robert Franklin Warnick coming out into the street and threatening my life. And she said, well, he was probably drunk. Yeah, he probably was. Does that make it okay? A man beats his wife, you say, oh, well, he was probably drunk. Does that make it okay? See, here's the thing. You guys are using people's drug addictions as excuses why they should get away with the crimes that they committed. Meanwhile, I am still taking punishment for the crimes that they committed. You say, oh, you can't punish somebody for something they didn't do. Really? The United States has executed people for murders that we knew people didn't commit. And even knowing those people didn't commit murders, we still followed through with the executions. Welcome to the United States, folks. We get to see that England, well, England is a bare subsistence community. They took their natural resources over and over and over again and speedily, to the extreme, used it for war. The wholesale slaughter of peoples within England, if they aren't making enough to live on, and they're starving to death in coal mines so they can keep the fires stoked for the Industrial Revolution. You think you'd cut them a break and be fucking thankful? At least provide them with some form of medical. Oh no, we couldn't have that. The Navy, however, we had enough people who lived aboard naval ships who were upper echelon, who had to go below decks and crouch down for them to actually have a genuine understanding and almost feel sorry for some of the people under their command. We got some of the very first hospitals that we ever got came from naval command centers. Yay. You build yourself mosques. You build yourselves political centers. You build yourselves capitol buildings. You build yourselves justice centers. You build yourself churches, synagogues. So even taken over by way of thinking, you still have to build things. To sell people the religion in your book, you have to produce the book. Production is construction in that particular case. In order to produce a completed book, you have to first construct the book or obtain the book from someone who has constructed it or obtained it from someone who constructed it. It was constructed by someone. But who profited the most and what happened to those profits? Elizabeth I, starting the slave trade between Africa and the United States, well, the Americas at the time, along with Sir Francis Drake. And these are British heroes, by the way. How many of these slaves are hateful at the British for starting this, for beginning this? How many people go back to the history of America before it was the United States? We want to blame just the United States for this. We want to try to pretend like slavery is just a United States thing. It's just a modern thing. Before there was the United States, there must not have been slavery. And of course, in the United States, we want to sell the idea that only black people were slaves. No, we had people who were slaves of every color, especially after the Civil War when the 13th Amendment was passed, which was our slavery law, our pro-slavery law, not anti-slavery. That's the law that went from slaves being private property in the South, where they might be property of somebody who's actually thinking of them as a human being, and also considering that if they hadn't bought that human being may have been bought by somebody else who will beat them to death. As soon as it becomes state-run, there is no heart to it. It is a strict set of guidelines that are not based on reality. A strict set of hoops you are expected to jump through despite the fact that no human being in your position could jump through them, which is why they put them in place. You want your rights as Americans? It doesn't matter how many American soldiers go kill foreign people and claim that it's for you and for your rights. If you're born poor, you are born without rights. And the only way to get rights is for people to care about your rights. For people to make the comparisons that you say shouldn't be made. Oh, don't compare yourselves with others, but then you want to compare us with others, don't you? You say I shouldn't complain about being raped because in Africa they might have put me in a set of tires and lit them on fire. Of course, who's to say that somebody surviving that in Africa, being put in a tire and set on fire, getting out of it, they get to hear from everybody else. The person is now in extreme pain for the rest of their life. They're disabled for the rest of their life. They're disabled for the rest of their life. And people look at them like they're the plague. Like they must have done something horrible to the Almighty for this. And then they say, oh, you should be happy, at least you're not dead. Really? Victimized to where you're no longer pretty, you're no longer sightly, and now you throw dinner parties for one. Well, now that you're ugly and disabled, hopefully your family will still care about you. You hope. We got all these people who wanna cut everybody leniency. Oh, we should feel bad for him. He's an alcoholic. We should let him go. He's an alcoholic. Well, that's just gonna let him get away with doing it, give him a big head about getting away with doing it. And much like the situation with Waylon Lolatai, he got away with assaulting a man in Denver, and they let him move and be a police officer elsewhere, despite the fact that he was violent. And then he assaulted me. And I tried telling on him, but what happened? I got sent to Clearview, where they held me for longer than they should have, denied me the right to turn them into the cops. Put drugs in me that didn't need to be put in me, and assaulted me. Clearview is now shut down because they did those things to other people too. Some of those people committed suicide immediately upon returning home because Clearview was such a horrible place. When you are victimized to the point that you want your life to end, but you are hoping that if you explain that to people who are blowing you off, hey, these people have bullied me to the point I want my life to end. I am coming to you for help stopping them. Oh, what I'm hearing is that you're suicidal, so we need to lock you up in an institution and put drugs in you. Fuck you. Fuck anyone who supports this. To stupid people, intelligent people sound like crazy people. But it's not intelligent people's fault that you are a superstitious fucking idiot. Good to be rid of you. Thanks for coming to visit. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. Remember, you are your brother's keeper and no victim left behind. Oh, and by the way, some folks want to know why it is that I like Jesus so much. If he's my favorite character out of any book ever written, why am I not a Christian? Well, maybe you should look at the history of Christianity for the answer to that.